Imagine stepping into a world where elegance was everything and practicality didn't exist. A world where women glided through ballrooms wrapped in 15 kilos of steel, lace, and fabric, all while pretending their bodies had no biological needs. Beneath those towering skirts and tightly laced corsets lay one of history's most bizarre challenges. How did Victorian women go to the bathroom? It wasn't just difficult, it was a daily war of secrecy, balance, and strategy. Because in an era obsessed with appearances, no one dared to mention the mess behind the glamour. The truth? It's stranger, more shocking, and more genius than you think. In this episode, we're peeling back the layers, literally, to reveal the hidden world of Victorian bathroom culture. From secret chamber pots to crotchless underwear and servants trained like stealth operatives, this is a story about control, constraint, and the quiet power of women who mastered it all. And before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing this community grow across the globe. Don't forget to subscribe and tell us what stories you'd like us to tell next. Now, imagine starting your day by assembling an outfit so complex it would make a modern astronaut suit look like gym wear. A Victorian woman's morning routine wasn't just about getting dressed. It was a full architectural process. First came the linen shift, a thin, breathable layer meant to absorb sweat and body oils, protecting the far more expensive outer garments. Then, the corset. Laced so tightly it could literally reshape a woman's ribcage, it wasn't just uncomfortable. It could alter your entire anatomy over time. Next came the petticoats. Not one, not two, sometimes up to 7, all stacked layer after layer, adding volume, weight, and a thick wall between her and the rest of the world. But the real masterpiece, the crinoline. Think of it as a wearable cage, a giant metal hoop skirt made from steel bands and fabric tapes, extending out several feet in diameter. It was designed to support all those layers, giving that perfect bell shape. But it came at a cost. Sitting down required strategy. Walking through doors, a calculated risk. Using the bathroom, we're getting to that. These garments were so massive that special furniture had to be built just to accommodate them. Chairs with missing arms, wide benches, even hollowed-out footrests. And yet, women managed all this with grace and poise, expected to glide through society as if nothing was amiss. But beneath the lace and steel was a daily struggle no one ever spoke about. Because here's the thing, even queens, duchesses, and debutantes still had to pee. And when you're essentially wearing a portable bird cage strapped to your waist, that becomes a serious logistical challenge. So how did they manage it? Well, it involved precision, coordination, and a few clever inventions you're not going to believe. But before we get to those, make sure you've subscribed and tapped that like button. It helps this channel grow and keeps these untold stories alive. Let's be clear, going to the bathroom in the Victorian era wasn't a private act. It was a covert operation. Forget zippers or elastic waistbands. With a metal hoop the size of a dinner table under your dress, you couldn't just lift your skirt. We're talking about navigating 20 pounds of fabric, lace, steel, and underpinnings, all while maintaining the grace of a duchess. That's where the chamber pot came in. Not some crude bucket in the corner. No. These were carefully crafted tools of discretion. The more expensive ones were oval-shaped to slide under all that fabric. The best models came with fitted lids to control smell, and, more importantly, to signal to staff whether they needed to be emptied. And yes, in wealthy households, furniture was designed around pee. Elegant chairs had secret compartments. Decorative cabinets hid multiple pots. Even grand commodes were carved to disguise their true purpose. The staff, trained like stealth ninjas, maids and servants glided through halls, checking and emptying pots, always unseen, never heard. But the real magic? It was in the execution. A Victorian woman would position herself carefully over the chamber pot without removing a single layer of clothing. With practice, and sometimes a little help, she could complete the entire operation while still fully dressed. At fancy events, this became even more elaborate. Retiring rooms, the Victorian equivalent of bathroom lounges, were set up in mansions and ballrooms. Women would slip away, assisted by maids who moved like pit crews, lifting layers, positioning pots, and keeping everything clean and invisible. Still, it wasn't foolproof. The massive skirts sometimes knocked over furniture or made noise, which is why etiquette dictated absolute silence and speed. And yes, all this happened without modern underwear. In fact, many women wore nothing underneath at all, until one too many wardrobe malfunctions on windy days forced society to invent split-crotch drawers. But we'll get to those. The lengths these women went to for privacy, dignity, and elegance, it's nothing short of extraordinary. And in the next part, we'll dive into the weirdest bathroom inventions you've never heard of. Now here's something that might surprise you. For most of the Victorian era, women didn't wear underwear. At least not in the way we know it today. Why? Because the sheer volume of fabric under those skirts, layers upon layers of linen, petticoats, and crinolines, was considered enough to preserve modesty. And frankly, adding anything else just made things more complicated. That worked fine until it didn't. Picture a windy day on a crowded street. A gust catches one of those massive skirts and flips it upward like an umbrella inside out. Suddenly, what was hidden is very, very visible. These oops moments became so common that Victorian society had to come up with a solution. Enter split-crotch drawers. Not quite pants, not quite panties. These were two separate pant legs, connected at the waist but open at the crotch. The genius? They preserved modesty most of the time, but allowed women to use the bathroom without removing anything. Form meets function. Finally. But bathroom visits weren't the only challenge. Monthly periods were a whole different battlefield. Pads as we know them didn't exist. Tampons? Not even close. Instead, women used homemade cloth pads, secured by something called a T-bandage, basically a reusable cloth belt that held absorbent material in place. The absorbents? Everything from linen and cotton to moss, sheep's wool, or even sawdust. Whatever was soft, local, and washable. On heavy flow days, women had to change these pads 12 to 20 times a day, all while wrapped in architecture and pretending nothing was happening. And of course, they couldn't talk about it. Menstruation was a taboo so strong that many young women didn't even know what a period was until they had their first. Yet somehow, they managed. Through quiet instruction passed from mother to daughter and unspoken networks of shared knowledge, women created a hidden system of support, discreet, private, and deeply resourceful. It wasn't perfect, It wasn't easy, but it worked. And it's proof that even in silence, women found ways to adapt. If you think keeping all those layers clean was easy, think again. Victorian dresses weren't just massive. They were delicate, expensive, and nearly impossible to wash. Silk, lace, velvet, intricate beadwork, all stitched together into gowns that couldn't be thrown into water without damage. So how did they keep them clean? They didn't. Most households only did major laundry twice a year during events called Great Wash Days, and that was mostly for linens, not dresses. Instead, women relied on a system of layered protection. The shift, that thin linen garment worn closest to the body, absorbed sweat and skin oils. These were washable. So were the split-crotch drawers and chemises. These inner layers acted like sacrificial shields, keeping the outer garments clean enough. For odors, they used powdered starches and perfumes. Brushing and airing out dresses in the sun helped too, because when you can't wash, you air things out and pray. But the issue wasn't just laundry, it was privacy. There was none. Chamber pots weren't just used in bedrooms. At social gatherings, it was completely normal for men to step outside into the garden and urinate behind hedges, sometimes even during conversation. As for women, if you were at a ball and needed to relieve yourself, you'd quietly disappear into a retiring room, get help from a maid, and return as if nothing had happened. In family homes, chamber pots were used in shared bedrooms, often in front of others. It wasn't considered strange. It was just life. And here's the kicker. Urine wasn't always considered waste. During certain periods, especially wartime, the government collected urine to process it into saltpeter, a key ingredient in gunpowder. That's right. Your chamber pot could help fuel a battlefield. When you think about all this, the silent systems, the daily improvisations, the impossible clothing, one thing becomes clear. Victorian women didn't just live within limits, they mastered them. With strategy, strength, and creativity, they made it all work. By now, you've probably realized Victorian women didn't just wear fashion, they wore responsibility. Getting dressed wasn't just time-consuming, it dictated every part of their day. From when they could leave the house, to how much water they drank, to how long they could stay at an event before needing a discreet exit strategy. They had to plan their bladders. They calculated how far they'd be from a retiring room. They coordinated with friends to share assistance. They learned how to eat, walk, and even dance in ways that worked with, not against, the metal architecture strapped to their hips. And through it all, they were expected to be graceful, silent, beautiful. But here's the incredible part. They didn't do it alone. Mothers passed on these techniques to their daughters. Maids became experts in stealth support, knowing exactly when to step in and how to do it without anyone noticing. Close friends developed coded language to excuse each other from social events without breaking etiquette. This hidden network of women across class, rank, and roles created a world of silent collaboration, a kind of secret sisterhood built not on rebellion, but on resilience. And what about the bigger picture? Well, these everyday struggles, the dressing, the discomfort, the limitations, may have actually contributed to real societal shifts. Because when women couldn't move freely in public, they stayed home. And when they stayed home, many began focusing on education, art, and intellectual pursuits. The clothing that once confined them may have also sparked their inner expansion. Over time, practicality began to win out. Crinolines gave way to bustles. Then came bicycle skirts, then pants. World wars pushed women into factories, offices, and roles that corsets simply couldn't follow. The rest, as they say, is history. So next time you slip into leggings or use a modern bathroom without a second thought, take a moment. Remember the women who turned inconvenience into strategy, silence into support, and impossible clothing into daily victories. They didn't just survive the Victorian era, they mastered it.